And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call. As tonight, the Indiana Hoosiers defeat Savannah State 95-49. It was a game that Indiana led from start to finish. And unlike Indiana's games a couple weeks ago against Lamar and Eastern Washington, obviously, and UNC Greensboro, this is one that Indiana got up early, and they were able to kind of show that killer instinct, put their foot on the throat of their opponent, so to speak, and never let Savannah State get into the game and really cruise to a victory at the end as Indiana's human victory cigar, Tim Priller, was able to get in there. And probably one of the funniest lines of the night, I forget who was doing the color commentary, but he said Indiana fans cheered because they thought Tim Priller got a block shot. So that was the kind of night that it was for Indiana as they thoroughly dominate Savannah State, holding Savannah State to just .75 points per possession, and that actually sounds better than it was. You know, Savannah State was able to score a little bit there late to kind of prop that number up, but really just a solid effort overall. Obviously not one that we're going to get too overly excited about because it is Savannah State, but still, it's a game where you want Indiana to come out and dominate, and that's exactly what we did, and we will talk about that on tonight's episode of the Assembly Call. I am your host, Jerod Morris, and I am joined tonight by a very special guest, Joel Nost, who is going to be filling in for Andy Bottoms and also for Ryan Phillips. And Ryan actually had to have sinus and septum surgery a couple of days ago, as he mentioned on his last show. So if you are watching us live right now, or if you listen to the podcast, do send a tweet to our buddy Ryan at Rumors and Rants. Just wish him well. Let him know you're thinking about him. He should be back with us on Tuesday for the Louisville game, so that's when he's supposed to be back. But I know right now he basically described how he's feeling as, like a rim when Troy Williams dunks on it. That's how his face feels. So he's in a little bit of pain, but he's doing well. So we wish him well. So let's start out tonight like we always do with the banner moment. I will kick things off, and then we'll go over to Joel to get his initial thoughts. But to me, the banner moment tonight is Yogi Ferrell and the way that he played in the first half. And, one thing is I kind of think back about some of the shows we've done this year. I often feel like we don't talk about Yogi until 30, 45 minutes into the show. And, part of that is just, there's so many new guys. You got James Blackman Jr. and Robert Johnson, Emmett Holden, and new guys to talk about. And I think sometimes Yogi's contributions can be taken for granted a little bit now that he is an upperclassman. We've seen what he can do, what he did as a freshman, how he stepped it up as a sophomore, and we somewhat take it for granted now. And I think that's actually almost a compliment to Yogi. It shows how much he's accomplished already in 2 years, that he's kind of in that category now that when he's scoring in double figures, getting assists, and doing well, that that we just kind of take that for granted. But I was really impressed with how he came out tonight, because we saw how Indiana played against Lamar, Eastern Washington, and UNC Greensboro, 3 games that we thought they would dominate, and they didn't. There were moments, obviously they lost one of them, and there were moments in the other 2 games where the team didn't look good. And I thought early in this game the Hoosiers came out a little sluggish. I mean, they had 4 turnovers, within the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game. It was, at the first TV timeout, it was only 10-7, 12-9 after the second TV timeout. So it's not like Indiana dominated right out of the gate, but I thought Yogi came out and played really well. Made 3 or 4, I think his first 3 shots that he took from the field, did a nice job getting guys involved for the game, finished with 18 points, I think, 7 assists, 3 boards. Just a really solid game, because what you're looking for in a game like this against an opponent like Savannah State, with Louisville coming up on the horizon, is for your upperclassmen to set the tone, playing hard on defense, playing focused on offense, so that you can come out and dominate like Indiana did tonight. And so just a hat tip to Yogi, who I thought really came out, set the tone, set the example for his young team, and then to their credit, they followed him. But I thought Yogi really did a nice job of setting the tone. And so obviously we'll break down all the individual performances, but his was the one that, for me, really stood out. And so now I am very excited to bring in our special guest host for tonight, Joel Nost. He is a freshman at IU. He's studying law and public policy, but tonight he's studying IU basketball. And actually he's, as I said, he's a student at IU. He's a legacy. I think he's the 12th or 13th member of his family to be a Hoosier. So very excited to have Joel on. And Joel, come on. and tell us your initial thoughts about tonight's IU victory.
Well, all right. Obviously, got some big shoes to fill tonight, so hopefully I can step up. My first couple things, just like you said, with the killer instinct when you're introduced to everything, I think that was a big issue for that. Like we've been worried about this season, especially in like the UNC Greensboro game, where we're not exactly sure if we have I don't know what the word is, but just it's not that we don't have the ability, but just kind of will to make us actually just dominate physically through the entire game. And I feel like Yogi did a good job of that, playing hard, keeping the intensity up the entire time. But I feel like another key player who doesn't get talked about enough or as much as he should for what he's not huge on the stat sheets, but is Collin Hartman. Collin Hartman on the stat sheets, he brings exactly what we need for him off the bench. I think he had 7 and 5 tonight, 7 points, 5 rebounds. But he's just, when I see him out on the court, it's like a glue for the team. Everyone just seems to function better around everything. So seeing Collin Hartman out there putting in good minutes, playing solid defense, and grabbing some points and boards, it's really nice to see out of a guy like him, especially since he's coming off that ACL injury.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think probably one of the biggest surprises of this season has been what Collin Hartman has done and just the consistent role that he has carved out. And like you said, he had 7 points, 5 boards, a steal. As I always tweet at least once a game, Collin Hartman out there doing Collin Hartman things. I mean, he's making hustle plays. He's in the right position on defense. And what he's giving Indiana and what he's giving Tom Crean is a consistent contributor off the bench. I mean, when he comes in, and Andy harps on this all the time, when he comes in, you know what you're going to get. And that's so important for a coach to have those guys coming in off the bench, that you know what you're going to get when you go to them. And Collin has been really consistent. And I will say, and someone mentioned this on Twitter tonight too, that he needs to play more. Well, I would caution you on that. I mean, sometimes guys, fill their role, and when they're playing that, 14 to 18 minutes, it's the perfect role for them. And, and Collin, again, he played 15 minutes tonight. That's been about, the amount of time that he's been playing, and he's been really effective. And I think that's right for him, and that's right for this team. And remember, he's still limited in practice. I know at least he was a week or two ago. Coach Crean mentioned that in a press conference. He's still not 100% fully recovered from the ACL, and so which makes his play even more impressive. Let's talk about some other individuals, Joel. So I want you to think for a minute here. I want to talk about Stan Robinson for a second, but think about another guy that jumped out to you. But I want to spend a few minutes talking about Stan, because when I look at a game like Louisville coming up, Stan Robinson is a guy who can be an important piece in that game. If he can give Indiana 10 to 12 really productive minutes, he's got the athleticism to help Indiana break Louisville's really tough press and to help Indiana really move the ball on offense, and what is going to be obviously their biggest challenge in terms of defense against them that they've faced all year. Plus, Stan is an excellent on-ball defender. And so he's a guy that he didn't play very many minutes in the Pitt game, but I was really happy to see him come out tonight and play focused. And what I saw from Stan tonight is that when he is focused on creating offense for himself, he's not as efficient, not as effective. When he is focused on creating offense for other people, he can be dynamite, and that's what we saw tonight. He had 5 assists. He did end up getting 7 points, and he was 3 of 5 from the field. He was able to go get fouled a couple times, get to the line, and still was able to score a little bit, but he was at his best when he was driving to create for other people, and he found Nick Zeisloff for a 3. He found Emmett Holt for a really nice play. And so I thought Stan tonight played about a half step slower, but 2 or 3 steps smarter, meaning he wasn't quite as just fast and just this whirling dervish like we often see, but I thought he was able to play calmer and make better decisions. And I also love that he was out there competing at the very end. A guy who played such a big role in Indiana's huge win over Wisconsin last year and has had some big moments for Indiana. He might not take too kindly to being out there when the end of the bench is playing in a game against Savannah State, but he was still competing, still playing hard. So I really like what I saw from Stan tonight, and I think he's still a young player, still going to be a guy who's inconsistent, but if we can get this Stan Robinson, especially against opponents like Louisville, I think he can be a really big key for this team off the bench. Joel, who else for you stood out tonight in terms of their individual performance?
For individual performance tonight, Troy Williams has to be, Because you see each game Troy's been back, he seems to be growing more and more. I felt like in the Pitt game, he got a lot of buckets, was getting to the rim consistently, but I feel like tonight he kind of stepped back and let the plays happen, like where he would be, like it happened to him. He wasn't forcing anything going to the rim. So Troy, he's obviously cut down on his turnovers from last year. Everyone knew he was a liability last year for several turnovers a game. So this year he's fighting hard for rebounds. He's letting the offense flow. He's not like forcing anything, not throwing up any jump threes, not and just he seems much more natural with his movement off ball. That's what I like to see. You see him running baseline. He got several oops tonight, not really nice oop from Blackman. So he seems comfortable when everyone else, he's able to sneak behind in that backdoor cut while everyone's focused on like the stat, like James Blackman Jr., Yogi, everyone off the drive. So seeing him recognize what the defense is giving him and working off balls, I think is like the best aspect of his game that's really seemed to be popping this year.
Yeah, I thought Troy did some really nice things tonight. He actually, early in the game, he did have a couple of those kind of, facepalm moments where he just gets out of control and throws up some kind of wild shot. But I thought after that first kind of 5 or 6 minutes when the starters played, he played much more under control after that. It's very similar with Stan. Just like I said, I thought when Stan was on offense looking to create for other people, with Troy, I think he needs to realize that there are so many guys on this team who can create, from Yogi to Robert Johnson, even to Stan, that he doesn't need to be taking 2, 3, 4 dribbles. And in fact, a lot of times bad things happen when he does. Either it's a turnover or a wild shot, but when he is patient and when he smartly moves without the basketball, especially on the baseline, like you said, he's able to free himself to do what he does best, which is finish. I mean, very few basketball players I've ever seen attack the rim with the fervor and just the zest and the zeal that Troy does. I mean, you can just see his eyes light up when he gets a free shot at the rim, and I think he's going to get a lot of those in this offense. This is not last year, where we really struggled to create space and struggled to create opportunities on offense. There's going to be plenty of space because of how this team can shoot, and because of the way that Yogi and Robert Johnson can get into the lane. If Troy is just patient and works that baseline, as he's done a lot this year, you're right, he's been a lot better at it, he's going to get a lot of just those open looks and those dunks and layups, which is when he's at his best. And I also thought he did a nice job on the glass. I mean, he had 5 boards, played some solid defense, and so I agree with you. A nice night for Troy. Do want to mention, if you have questions or comments, tweet them to us at Assembly Call. Use the hashtag Assembly Call, and we can address them here on the show. And also make sure that you go to our page, assemblycall.com/Christmas. If you need any last-minute Christmas gifts, it's not quite last minute yet, but we're getting closer and closer to the big day. I've got, I think, like 20 great Christmas gift ideas up there now. Check those out. I'll be adding to that in the future as well. Joel, I want to talk about Indiana's defense because that, of course, is an ongoing story this year. I mean, really poor defense cost us the Eastern Washington game. It's been so up and down. Tonight, Indiana holds Savannah State to 0.75 points per possession. Now, it's a little tough to gauge Indiana's defense in a game like this because the Savannah State team is not a good offensive team. They only scored 26 points against Louisville, and I mean they're one of the worst offensive teams in the country. But I did think at least Indiana showed some better signs on defense tonight. I mean, they were active. It looked to me like there was some better communication and just better consistency. I mean, Savannah State does have some quickness, and Indiana wasn't just allowing people to dribble all over the place. The 2-3 zone looked good, even though Savannah State didn't necessarily look like they had a great clue of what to do against the 2-3 zone. But I thought overall, you hold a team to 0.75 points per possession. It's a pretty good defensive night. So, I don't know that we take a whole lot of positives from it, but, finally, for the first time in a while, playing one of these kind of lower, tier teams, we at least don't have to gripe about the defense, which is kind of a victory in and of itself, don't you think?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Being able to know with confidence coming down in the second half that, okay, we got this under control, it's really comforting feeling to have. It's impressive. Like the stretches we went on, especially the end of the first half, because as you said, it was 12-9 at one point, and so you're sitting there thinking, how is this Savannah State team, they were effectively beating the 2-3 zone for a little while there. And so the stretches we went on where we were playing just team defense, it's not so much as like one-on-one matchups where guys are just getting blown by. Everyone is all working together. People are shifting well off ball, picking up on everyone else. They're not getting lost, which seems to have been a big problem, especially against Eastern Washington and UNC Greensboro. UNC Greensboro set a record for the amount of threes they hit against us. You saw a lot more people recognizing where the ball is going and people picking up that if someone goes to help, the help side defense was good, and people switching over to cover that free man. It seemed a lot better. Obviously, we don't have to worry as much about the three-point shooting of this team. I don't know the exact stats, but Ken Palm has them real low on their three-point and offensive percentage as a whole. So having to not worry so much about that may be a factor in that us packing the paint as teams tend to do against us last year, because we didn't have that same three-point threat. But I think as a whole, it's definitely a big improvement, and we need to carry more of that into Louisville.
Yeah, no, we definitely do against Louisville. Let's talk about our freshmen. The two freshmen in the backcourt, James Blackman Jr., Robert Johnson. Haven't really mentioned them yet. Both did some nice things. James ended up leading the team in scoring, 18 points. He had 2 assists, 3 boards. Was 4 of 7 from downtown, so kind of got back. He was I think through his first 5 or 6 games, he was shooting 60% from downtown. Had a little bit of a lull for him. I think he was still 4 of 13 over his last few games, which isn't terrible. For him, it counts as a major slump. So nice to see him shoot well tonight. And Robert Johnson, 10 points, 7 boards, 3 assists. What we've come to expect from him, which is stuff in the stat sheet, had 2 steals too. I was a little disappointed that early in the game we saw some of those head slap turnovers from Robert. A couple of those inexplicable ones with just a couple lazy passes. But he settled in and had a nice game. So a nice job from those guys overall. I do think, and I'm interested to get your perspective on this. Look, I love James Blackman Jr. He is one of the most natural offensive players that I've seen in an Indiana uniform. And so he's going to score his points. I continue to be a little bit concerned about his defense and a little bit him seeming to kind of float through games sometimes. And again, I will want to make sure that I say he is a freshman, and that's not that unusual for a freshman. But I do want to see, and I think we're going to need to see now with Louisville, Butler, Georgetown coming up, and then the Big Ten schedule coming up, him get a little more locked in on defense and a little bit more consistent with his competitiveness and toughness on the defensive end, I will say. And I watching on TV from 1,000 miles away, sometimes it's hard to gauge those things. But I just think, like a lot of freshmen, there's that next gear he can get to. And I think that's, you see Tom Crean doing a lot of coaching with him, and I think that's one of the things that he's telling him. That's what I think he really needs to go from the really, really good player that he is now to being a great all-around player. And that will really help this team go to the next level. But overall, what did you think from the 2 freshman guards tonight?
I love Robert Johnson. I love the way he plays. I think he always brings the same level of intensity no matter who we're playing. He does make those dumb mistakes where you don't know what's going on in his head, but he always has that kind of tenacity where he's going to go after it. He's scrapping for boards. Tonight he missed his own layup, Polk goes right back for it. So he's always in the mix of things. He's always scrapping for those 50-50 balls, which is really good to see out of him. And he's a terrific on-ball defender, doesn't give up many points off the drive. So I love how Robert Johnson plays. He's not going to outscore Blackman. That's just not going to happen. But he brings more of that Hartman vibe where he's getting to the point where we saw him against Pittsburgh and we've seen him against Savannah State. So you see kind of tougher competition and the same level of competition where he's getting the same amount of stats. So the consistency out of Robert Johnson, especially from a freshman like that, it's good. It's comforting to see. So we know, just like with Hartman, we know what we're going to get out of him. And he's also going to play with that same level of intensity no matter who the opponent. I love Blackman too. I love the way he can fill it up. He's really smooth in transition. He can finish around the basket. He can hit the 3. No one has any questions, as you said, about his offensive game. But to me, defense, I feel like the guards, the Big Ten guards that he's gonna have to go up against, that scares me because there's some good talent that he's gonna have to match up with. Like I'm thinking specifically Sam Decker, Wisconsin. Like Sam Decker's explosive offensive player, but I feel like Blackman's too quick. He's quick to leave his feet. He's a little like trigger happy when he wants to.
Now, he probably won't guard a guy like Decker, only because
Oh.
Decker, he's more of a kind of a wing player. But your point is well taken because there are some excellent guards that he will have to play against, and and you do worry if he gets in those matchups playing one-on-one, how he'll do.
Yeah, that's exactly what I worry about. Because it's been happening this year. I've noticed it being at the games, watching the games. You see several times he'll be quick to bite on like a little head fake from the three. The guy will blow right by him, and that kind of the whole defense gets out of sync then. So I think he's very capable, as you said, of just turning on that second gear, or even whatever gear he can get to, and really becoming like a great defensive player. He's got length. He's good size guard. So I feel like there's a lot more he can do on the defensive end that he just hasn't gotten to yet. Obviously, yeah.
No, yeah, and I agree with you. I think one of the things that I guess is a little surprising is laterally he doesn't seem to move very well, and I can't tell yet if it's a quickness thing, if it's a fundamentals thing, but he seems to get caught up on picks, seems to sometimes be a step slow with his lateral movement. Maybe that'll come with better awareness, and and like it does with a lot of freshmen, I think Robert Johnson is, in terms of understanding the level of competitiveness, possession in, possession out, he seems to be a little further ahead. Now, like you said, James Blackman Jr. clearly, just in terms of skill and offensive skill, is, light years ahead of where most freshmen are. When the rest of that catches up, that's going to be scary. So, hopefully it's something that happens this year. A couple quick numbers, and then I want to ask you, Joel, a question that I think you'll be in a unique position to answer, being a student on campus. But just a few quick numbers here. Indiana ended up scoring 1.42 points per possession, which is outstanding. But that's what you want to see a good offensive team, which Indiana is, do against a team like Savannah State. The Hoosiers turned it over on 20.9% of their possessions. They had some turnovers there late. So it didn't seem that bad. A lot of turnovers early, a lot of turnovers late, but I thought during the meat of the game, the Hoosiers did a good job of taking care of the ball. They took care of the glass, out-rebounding Savannah State 41-24, so did a nice job there. And then a quick Emmett Holt, Hunter Mosquera-Perea update. Holt had 8 points, 5 boards, a steal, 2 blocks. Really did a nice job, I thought. Only played 11 minutes, but was active, was confident when he was in there. Basically, it was a continuation of what we saw in the Pittsburgh game, which was good to see from Emmett. Hunter, he had 2 points, he had 3 boards. Thought he started out okay. To start the second half, had 2 really poor defensive possessions. He only played 15 minutes. Kind of an incomplete night for him. But that's your update on those guys. And Jeremiah April got in the game. And again, showed little flashes while he was in there. Only played 5 minutes. Had an assist, a rebound, a steal, and a block. And I have to say, the assist that he had was a beautiful backdoor cut. I think it was Stan who went backdoor. And Jeremiah threw a really nice bounce pass to him. So the first time he was in, he showed flashes with that beautiful turnaround jumper. Tonight we see the backdoor pass from Jeremiah April. So the guy has some skills. Whether or not he'll ever become a rotation player this year, I don't know, but he is showing us when he gets in there that he can do some things. So, Joel, let me ask you a question, because I host podcasts on the Brink for Inside the Hall as well, and this week we had Mike Miller of the Herald Times on, and I asked him what the feeling was on campus, and he said that he was a little bit surprised that, not that it was apathetic, but just that there was a little more apathy than he would think. It didn't seem like there was quite as much excitement, quite as much just fervor about the Hoosiers so far this year, which, coming off a 17-15 season with no postseason play and what happened in the offseason and a loss to Eastern Washington, you can kind of get it. But you also, I think we all like to think that Indiana is a little bit above kind of the ebbs and flows of fan support, that everybody's always there. Tell me what you think from your perspective. I know it's your first year on campus, but what are you seeing kind of from the student perspective, the confidence level, the excitement level in this year's team?
I can definitely agree with him that it is more apathetic. I feel like the student body is more like waiting for that big win, that big something to get everyone just jump back into it. Like I know everyone, especially from being at the games, everyone is still crazy about the team. I think we are above the ebbs and flows, as you said, of this. I think because it is Indiana basketball, it's tradition, it's everything. This is the one state where it matters. All the other 49 states just have basketball. So I think
and that's coming from, and you grew up in Georgia, right?
Yes, I did grow up in Georgia.
But you still know.
I know. I know SEC football, and because that's where I'm from, and there's nothing. It's still the craziest SEC fan has nothing on an Indiana basketball fan. But it is kind of like I feel like everyone is just so ready to like leap back into action and get crazy excited and go insane for the Hoosiers. But I feel like they're just waiting for this team to prove something. I feel like the Pitt game, well, I feel like that was a really strong step in the right direction, and I think the Eastern Washington game kind of like set us back a little bit. But I definitely think after coming up with the tougher part of the non-conference schedule, as we have Louisville and Georgetown and Butler all coming up, I feel like depending on how we play through those games, I don't expect us to win every game. Obviously, Louisville's going to be a huge challenge. Having some freshmen go to Madison Square Garden for their first away game, really, it's going to be a huge test. Yeah. But seeing the level of heart that like those freshmen are going to put in, as you were talking about earlier about seeing James Blackman just kind of cruise through games, if we really see a lot of like heart, especially coming out of like our freshmen, I think a lot more of the fan base will be right back into like the huge spirit of things, and it'll be way more excitement than this apathetic feel. And it's especially like that coming off the Devin Davis injury too. That kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. When you combine again the off season last year, it's not like we bring in great opponents to Assembly Hall. Really, I mean, we've had SMU and Pitt, but neither one of those is necessarily a blue blood. So there hasn't been that big game for everybody to rally around. So I get it, and I think if Indiana can, let's say, play well against Louisville, lose that one, but beat Butler, beat Georgetown, and kind of go into the Big Ten season with some momentum, I think you'll see that the excitement start to come back. And for those of us who watch on TV, for Assembly Hall to kind of sound and feel like Assembly Hall again, and for you, I'm sure, like me, when I went to Indiana my freshman year, you want to be in Assembly Hall when it feels like Assembly Hall. And of course, you'll be able. Do you have tickets this year? You be going to a lot of the games?
Oh yeah, of course. I got season tickets.
Okay, good.
No way I was going to miss out on that.
You'll be able to be there as part of the solution. You'll be able to be there cheering loudly. What games did you get floor seats for?
What games I get floor seats for? I got to sit in the wooden bleachers for it was Mississippi Valley State, and then I had decent tickets to the SMU game. I was like section L, row 36, so I was in the student section, but I don't know about the rest of my tickets. I gotta look at them. I've had some balcony seats, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
so let's talk real quick about Tom Crean. Guy gets a lot of criticism. Certainly, some of it's deserved. I believe that he's done a great job with this team the last two games. Again, we go back to that 3-game stretch against Lamar, Eastern Washington, UNC Greensboro, and Indiana really underperformed coming off the high of that SMU victory. And I thought he did a really nice job of getting the team to rebound and play an excellent 40 minutes against Pitt. And again tonight, you're not going to win any Coach of the Year awards for dominating Savannah State on your home floor, but there is something to be said for having a young team ready to do what it's supposed to do. And so I think the fact that coming off 120 pretty subpar minutes to now put back-to-back 40-minute games together leading into Louisville, you alluded to it. It's really hard to prepare this team, especially a young team, to play away from home for the first time in New York against that Louisville team, which is why I think a lot of us are very realistic with our expectations for that game. But certainly at least we have some positive momentum going into it. And so if we're going to criticize Coach Crean when he struggles, we certainly need to tip our caps when he's got the team ready to go. And frankly, I really liked at the end of the game, I think there's about 4 minutes left. Indiana's up by 40-some. There's a timeout, and he's intense in the huddle. I don't know what he was saying, but I liked the intensity. You could tell he didn't want the guys just cruising to the finish line. I mean, he wasn't going to keep, Yogi and all the starters in there, and, he emptied the bench, but he wanted those guys out there competing and was leading by example. And so nice to see that. Just overall, nice couple of games for Coach Crean. What are your thoughts on him, kind of in the micro sense these last few games, and then also big picture in terms of him, as the leader of the program?
Especially for these last couple of games, I've really liked. I think he's bringing that killer instinct. I think he's one of the reasons that we were able to dominate the second half of this game. We didn't let up at all. I think him and Yogi combined, because Yogi has to be a leader on this team, are really sparking that. I think he did better this game than he did against Pitt, because if you go back and watch it, we're up 20 or 18 or something like that against Pitt, and then we kind of let them nudge their way back into it, where it got it could, if we made a couple more bad plays, then they could have turned the game completely around. So I think he's learned. I think he's pushing the freshmen, and just because we do have a young team, I think he's pushing them to keep that intensity level throughout every game, and not just get into this complacent state almost, where they're not pushing themselves the entire time, which as I think he's been doing a good job with that, especially in this game. And so we did finish out strong against Pitt, so I had to give him that too. Big picture stuff, it's still questionable. I like Tom Crean. I think he's a good coach. I think he brings in good talent from all over the place, and he's obviously a good recruiter and pulled Blackman back from Kentucky, so that's always a good thing to have. I think he gets a lot of criticisms for stuff that may be out of his control. You can't always see, Victor Oladipo leaving a year early and Zeller, so I think he gets some more junk that he wouldn't be able to. There's just unforeseen things. But overall, I like Crean. I think he's doing a good job with the program.
So as we look ahead here to Indiana's next opponent, Louisville, you probably already know this, but they're really good. Currently fourth in KenPom. They have the second best defense in the nation, currently giving up .84 points per game. Pretty sure Kentucky's defense is number one. Both those teams just play phenomenal defense, and as I see some of the tweets coming through from the press conference, people are already talking about Louisville. As Tom Crean says via Justin Alvers, their pressure defense is as good as anybody's in the country. Yogi mentioned they're obviously not just going to be able to stand around with the ball. We can't just hold the ball. We've got to attack the press. That's via Zach Osterman. So it's going to be a huge challenge for Indiana. Now, Louisville offensively, they're only 25th in the country offensively. So, for Indiana, they've got to bring a good defensive effort and really make Louisville work. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to see how and if they're able to defend Montrezl Harrell. I think when we thought all we had was Hunter Mosquera-Perea against Montrezl Harrell, that seemed pretty impossible. Now that we've got Emmett Holt, starting to play some significant minutes, that still seems extraordinarily daunting, just may not, maybe not quite as extraordinarily daunting. Look, this is going to be a really difficult game for Indiana. I think it's definitely a game that if Indiana goes up there, competes really hard, and is in this game at the under 8-minute timeout, at the under 4-minute timeout, and is within 7 or 8 points, I think you can feel good about it. Do we want Indiana to be past the point of moral victories? Yes. But let's be realistic with where we are. And, if Indiana wins this game, great. Are any of us expecting it? No, probably not. We just want to see the team go out there and compete and look competent. And so we'll see. It's going to be a huge challenge for the guys, and we'll see what they can do. What are you feeling, Joel? Obviously, before the Pitt game, I think we're looking at that game fearing that Louisville's going to beat us like they beat Savannah State. Now, after these last two games, I think at least we go into that thinking, hey, you know what? If they don't play a perfect game and we're clicking on all cylinders, we can make a game of this thing.
I definitely think we're going to stay in the game. I think we have the offensive ability that will keep us in it. If anything, we're gonna hit threes, and that'll keep us in it. I'm really worried about Montrezl Harrell. I think he's one of the best big men in the nation. He plays on a terrific team, so Perea needs to play like he's a junior center in the Big Ten. He's played against several really strong. He's played with really strong big men. So he needs to really show what he's learned defensively. Again, I'm not expecting him to have like a huge stat-wise game. I'm not expecting him to grab a crazy amount of rebounds and get a bunch of buckets on Montrezl Harrell. I don't expect that at all, but he needs to show that he's going on his third year now, that what he's learned from playing in the Big Ten is like being able to defend and not get bullied around inside. Because if he's not able to do that, and we have to put Emmett Holt on him, Emmett Holt is still a freshman. He's showing us like really good flashes on what he's been able to do. He's fighting for those 50-50 balls. He's using those long arms, getting boards, putbacks, scrapping. But just experience-wise, it's going to be a real tall order if we expect Emmett Holt to be able to guard someone of that caliber. But go ahead.
Oh no, I mean I agree with you. I think this is the type of game where you need your upperclassmen to step up. Playing in the comfortable confines of Assembly Hall, game after game after game. Young guys can get comfortable. Now they're going to be completely thrown out of their comfort zone. And obviously James Blackman Jr. has played in really big games all throughout his high school career, and so has Robert Johnson. But this is their first time with Indiana, playing in New York, playing against a team like Louisville with the speed that they've never seen in a basketball game before. And that's where you really want your upperclassmen to come to play. We know Yogi will, and I agree with you. I mean, it's a big moment for Hunter. And I think if he can go out there and give Indiana 15 to 20 solid good minutes, that gives them a chance to make this something of a game, and allows Emmett Holt to hopefully come in, and not have to, clean up a mess. You want Emmett Holt to be able to come in and just continue what's been happening and play solid. So we'll see. I mean, Hunter has given us some reasons for optimism this year. He's had some moments where he's played better, but we still see the inconsistency from him. So that's kind of the frustration, is not really knowing what to expect. You mentioned the three-point shooting, and I agree with you. Indiana's going to have to hit threes to stay in this game. Louisville currently fourth in the country, giving up only 22.8% from the three-point line, so their three-point defense is very good. And obviously, as we know, they force a lot of turnovers. Currently, opponents turn the ball over 27.7% of the time. That's fifth in the country. Indiana is going to have to take care of the ball. And that was a big bugaboo for the team last year. They've been much better this year. I think they've got to keep turnovers under 20% to have a chance. Because when this team keeps the ball, they can be really good on offense against any defense. But they've got to give themselves enough possessions, enough shots to stay in the game. So we'll see. Do you want to be bold enough to offer up any kind of prediction about that game?
I made a bet with a couple of my buddies of mine that if Indiana wins this game, I'm getting the IU logo shaved into my head. So,
are you really?
Yeah. So, kind of hoping they.
Being in college is fun.
College is fun. I love it. I don't know. It'll be a big stage for everyone. I hope the Hoosiers can pull it off. Optimistically, maybe we scrap by 3-4 point win, and I just lose my mind and get IU shaved in my head. But
I like your optimism. I like that optimism. That's good.
Yeah.
We don't have Andy on here predicting a 70-point loss, so.
Oh yeah,
that's good.
No.
Let's keep it positive tonight.
Yeah, no, I'm not bringing any bad news. We're coming off a win. We're feeling good. We looked good. Let's just keep it rolling. Maybe.
I like it.
5-point swing either way. That's what I'll call it.
I like it. And then have one hell of a night on campus after that. There's nothing better than celebrating on campus after an IU win. Still, my favorite memory of college is when we beat Kent State to go to the Final Four, and just how crazy everybody went, and going down on Kirkwood. I mean, obviously the win over Duke was awesome too, but I mean, when we went to the Final Four, I mean, it was just insane. I mean, the whole experience, those 3 weeks of the NCAA tournament in 2002, unbelievable. So I always hope, my brother went to Indiana. He was there for the Watt shot, against Kentucky. So he's down on the court celebrating. So he kind of had his signature IU fan moment. That's what I always wish for anybody, in your position who's in school, that you get to have that moment. And whether it's this year's team or a team down the road, that they have a deep run or some great moment that you get to experience. Because, man, there is nothing better on campus than when the basketball team has some great moment. It's just unbelievable.
Oh yeah, trust. I haven't experienced it yet, but my dad was here when they won the '81 championship, and the stories he has from that night. I probably shouldn't be saying them on here, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I can only imagine I have one of those moments. I mean, even like AJ Moy blocking Boozer. I mean, that night must have been insane on campus. And I'm waiting for those. We're gonna have one of those. Banner 6 is coming while I'm here.
Heck yeah. Hey, and you can do your part in it. I mean, that's the one thing about being an IU fan and being in Assembly Hall, and that's why I love college basketball so much, is when you're in there, like you can really affect things. And you might think, oh, I'm just one person, but when you have so many people that are just all dedicated to IU winning and just passionate about it and going crazy, we've seen teams. I mean, the whole "you rank them, we spank them" that Chronic Hoosier always tweets out. And Indiana's beaten 16 ranked teams in the last 4 years or whatever it is, tied with Kansas. That's why, because it's tough coming into Assembly Hall, and you now, as a freshman, you get to grab that torch, carry it. And so we're entrusting it to you. And I think based on your performance tonight and what I've seen from you on Twitter, you're going to do just fine with it.
Okay. There's a lie. You're gonna make me blush on camera. What are you doing?
No, you're gonna do a great job, man. All right, let's close things up here. I don't even know what's going on in the Big Ten title game or in the FSU Georgia Tech game. So let's close things up here so everybody can go catch up on those games. Your final thoughts, Joel, and then I'll wrap it up.
Final thoughts. Think we finished out strong, which is something every fan's been steaming about. We all wanted that real big blowout win. We didn't really get that in exhibition games either, so it's good to be able to really blow by someone, finish out strong, and seeing a lot of development and maturation between the freshmen and even the older players. I mean, seeing everyone seems like they're having tonight. When you watch this team tonight, it looked like they're having a lot of fun out there, and it looks like we're obviously levels of the competition still to be included, but they look like the chemistry is looking well on the court. Everyone seems to be getting along together, and that's always good to see out of your team. So if we can keep this train rolling, let's steam right on past Louisville, take down New York.
Yeah, and you talk about the maturity, seeing tweets here from Justin Albers and Alex McCarthy quoting Tom Crean about Stan Robinson, and this is Crean. I worry, are you working too hard? I mean, he wants to so bad in terms of improve. And then he says about Stan, he doesn't go home after the walkthrough. He goes back out in the gym and shoots. And, which is great to hear, for a guy who's kind of struggled to find his role this year and his minutes have been up and down, to hear that Stan's putting in the work. That's why he has a game like he does tonight. I mean, he comes out and plays really well. My dad was a coach, and every coach that I've ever heard, you play how you practice. And so, clearly Stan's been putting in the work, and it didn't really pay off against Pitt, but it did tonight. And I'm feeling better about Indiana's chance against Louisville, because I think he's a big part of what it will take for Indiana to win a game like that. And him playing well tonight makes me feel a lot better. So really nice to see that from Stan, and just nice to see Indiana take care of business. This has been a program last year and so far this year that has played to the competition a little bit. And played up when the competition is good and played down when the competition isn't so good. And tonight Indiana didn't do that. They played against themselves and they did well. And they put together a solid 40 minutes. They get a solid victory over Savannah State. And really that's the main thing to take away from tonight, is Indiana did exactly what they needed to do. They took care of business, and now that's 2 straight games back-to-back, 2 solid 40-minute efforts from the Hoosiers. We'll see what it means on Tuesday. That is the biggest measuring stick this Indiana team has had so far. It may be the biggest measuring stick they have all year, because this is probably the best team that Indiana is going to play this season, depending on how good you think Wisconsin is. So we'll see if this Indiana team is ready. The talent is on this roster to beat Louisville on a neutral floor. I mean, Indiana can play with them. It's just, do they have the maturity yet? Do they know enough about how to break a press? And do they have enough? They don't have any experience away from Assembly Hall, so how do they react to that? Those are some of the unknowns. We don't know. That's what gives Louisville a really big advantage in this game, plus their size down low. But let's hope our Hoosiers go up there, compete, give us something to cheer for and get excited about. But either way, we'll be here after the game to talk about it on the assembly call. Andy will be here. Ryan may be. Depends on how well he's recovered from his surgery, so hopefully he will be here. But I want to thank my co-host tonight, Joel. Joel, thank you so much for coming on. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. And next time you're close to the court there at Assembly Hall, we want to see you cheering hard and holding up one of those big faces.
I hope to be. It's been a pleasure being on here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely, man. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching live or listening on the podcast. If you are doing that, we'll have an email to send out to you tomorrow morning. Other than that, enjoy the rest of your college football games this evening, and we will talk to you Tuesday night after Indiana-Louisville. See you, everybody.